All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a mystery that's hiding in plain sight, right in the middle of the global energy market. We're talking about a 40 million pound goose that's haunting the nuclear fuel supply chain. It's a massive deficit that you won't find on any official chart, but believe me, it is about to change everything.
You know, if you just glance at the headlines, things might seem pretty calm. The spot price for uranium, relatively stable. But if you dig just a little deeper, there's this quiet panic starting to ripple through the world's nuclear utilities. They're looking ahead, and something they see has them absolutely scrambling. So the real question is, what are they seeing that most of us are missing?
Okay, so the first piece of this puzzle is the one that's out in the open for everyone to see. It's a huge, well-documented supply cliff, and the entire nuclear industry is heading straight for it. This isn't just some theory, right? It's a certainty that's already baked into existing contracts, and that clock is ticking loudly.
Now, the key phrase to understand here is uncovered requirements. That's just industry speak for a really big problem. Utilities know they're going to need this fuel to keep the lights on, but they literally have no contracts signed to buy it. And just look at how that percentage explodes, from about 15% this year to over 75% by 2030. That is a massive risk to energy security just waiting to happen.
This chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? We are not talking about a gradual decline here. We're talking about an absolute free fall. In just 4 years, 3/4 of the entire world's nuclear fuel needs are completely unsourced. I mean, can you imagine if we found out that 3/4 of the world's oil supply for 2030 had no seller? That's the level of chaos we're dealing with here.
So, you might be looking at those dates and thinking, 2027, 2028, that's a few years away. What's the big deal? Well, here's the catch. It takes a solid 18 to 24 months to get raw uranium from a mine, process it, and turn it into fuel rods for a reactor. That means for a utility to get fuel for late 2027 or early 2028, where remember, over half the supply is uncovered, they need to be signing contracts right now. The panic window isn't in the future, it's today.
But as big as that visible problem is, that's not the real story. That's just the opening act. The real driver behind this quiet panic is something much, much larger. Something that's completely invisible to most people watching the market. It's a hidden surge in demand that's happening as we speak, deep in the shadows of the supply chain.
40 million pounds. That's the scale of this invisible problem. And let me be clear, this isn't demand from new reactors being built, no. This is a sudden, massive swing in demand that's been created by a fundamental change in how nuclear fuel gets made. It's a ghost demand that has completely blindsided the market.
So what is this ghost? Well, it has a name: overfeeding. It sounds complicated, I know, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It all boils down to a trade-off in the fuel production line. Do you want to be efficient or do you want to be fast? For the last decade, the answer was always efficiency. But now it's all about speed. And that one little change has enormous consequences.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's just forget about uranium for a minute. Let's talk about something way simpler: making orange juice. Seriously, this analogy is the key to understanding this entire 40 million pound ghost.
Okay, so for the last decade, the world had way too many juicers, or enrichment plants, so they ran them slow and super efficiently. They squeezed every last drop of juice out of each orange, which is our uranium. This whole process was so efficient it actually created a surplus, like a ghost mine that added an extra 20 million pounds of supply to the market every year. But today, it's a completely different story. With Russian enrichment out of the picture for the West, there's a juicer shortage. Western plants are slammed, so they've switched to a fast and messy mode. They just give each orange a quick squeeze to keep the line moving. The result? To get the same glass of juice, they now need way more oranges.
And this is where you get this incredible double whammy. First, that 20 million pound ghost mine of extra supply we had, poof, it's gone. Vanished into thin air. Second, this new, fast and messy process creates about 20 million pounds of brand new demand just to make up for how inefficient it is. So you lose 20 million pounds of supply and you add 20 million pounds of new demand and bam, there's your staggering 40 million pound shift in the market. Just like
Okay, so that's the analogy. Let's bring this back to the real world and connect it to the forces that are actually driving this crisis. This isn't just some theoretical change. It is a direct consequence of a massive geopolitical squeeze happening right now.
The technical, kind of nerdy term for the efficiency setting on our juicer is the tails assay. Just think of it like an efficiency dial. A low tails assay, that's our slow and efficient squeeze. A high tails assay, that's the fast and messy one. For years, that dial was set low. Today, it's being cranked way, way up.
And this table, this is where the rubber really meets the road. I mean, look at these numbers. Check out the current shift we're in. By moving from the old standard up to today's overfeeding level, enrichers need almost 32% more raw uranium to produce the exact same amount of finished fuel. It's a tiny technical change that has a massive, massive real-world impact.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is a consensus among the industry experts, the people who live and breathe this stuff. A 20 to 25% increase in demand for raw uranium just from flipping a switch on the enrichment process. And this happens before a single new reactor even gets turned on. It's pretty wild.
So what flipped the switch? What was the catalyst? It was one single geopolitical event. You see, Russia controls almost half of the world's enrichment capacity, our juicers. So the ban on Russian uranium imports basically forced Western utilities into a corner. Suddenly, Western enrichment plants are running at 100% capacity, and they still can't keep up. Their only option to fulfill their contracts is to overfeed, to trade more raw uranium for precious, precious time.
So let's pull all these threads together. We've got a visible supply cliff, an invisible demand surge, and a geopolitical catalyst. Let's look at the immediate consequences of all this for the global energy market.
Now, the reason this 40 million pound ghost isn't making headline news is because of a reporting gap. All these decisions about tails assays are made in secret, buried deep inside these long-term private contracts. And crucially, there's a lag time, about 12 to 18 months, before that demand actually hits the spot market. Well, guess what? That lag time is over. We are in the impact zone right now.
And to really put this number into perspective, think about this. The world's largest uranium mine produces around 18 million pounds a year. This 40 million pound demand swing is like having two of the world's biggest mines instantly vanish from the supply chain while a whole new mine's worth of demand appears out of thin air.
So, what are the absolute key takeaways here? First, the real uranium deficit is way, way bigger than what's being reported. Second, that panic to buy fuel for 2027 and 2028, it's already happening. Third, we're starting to see a two-tiered market where secure Western origin uranium is getting a premium. And finally, the next stress point to keep an eye on is the conversion sector. That's the step before enrichment, and it is the tightest bottleneck in the whole supply.
All of this leaves us with one last, kind of provocative question. If a 40 million pound deficit can just hide in the complex plumbing of the fuel cycle, completely missed by everyone just counting reactors, it really makes you wonder, in a world of increasingly complex supply chains, what other invisible forces are out there shaping our future?